Welcome to the FNO InsureTech podcast, a place where movers and shakers from all points within the insurance ecosystem gather and discuss all things InsureTech. We talk about how technology and innovation are affecting and driving change in the industry. Here are your hosts, Matt D. Fothery, Lee Boyd, and Rob Beller.
Hey, podcast world, welcome to yet another thrilling, exciting, unbelievable, stupendous. You can throw out your television. You can throw away your computer. Just keep your phone so you can listen to the podcast on there, because the only entertainment that you need is this podcast, FNO InsureTech, with your hosts, Mr. Lee Boyd.
And Mr. Rob Beller.
That's me. That's you. You got it.
I did it. You really hyped up the show there. This is the only entertainment that you'll ever need. In fact, get rid of your Netflix, get rid of your Hulu. All you need is
That's
podcast.
right. That's right. I mean, why would you want to stream anything when you can listen to this?
That's right. I mean, why not listen to the podcast? So, in fact, there's so many of them that you could listen to one a day for 3 months in a row, I think.
No, you could listen to one a day for the rest of your life. I saw that Spotify now has 1.5 million podcasts.
Yeah.
Which means that like one out of every, so many people on the earth has a podcast. Right?
There's a lot of podcasts out there. But they don't all rank really high like FNO InsureTech.
Oh, no. In fact, we can brag about a couple of things. Should we do that?
I would love it if you did.
So we found some universal metrics on our podcast. We are a top 100 in the U.S. technology podcast.
Yay!
A top 100 in the U.S. business podcast.
Yay!
We're in the top 100 in business podcasts in Mongolia, as well.
That's
so
true.
Watch out. We're on the rise.
We had a pretty good month in Israel last month as well.
Did we really?
Yeah.
I didn't hear about that. How did we do in Israel?
Well, it just says it got listened to once. So
okay, we're huge in Israel.
Big.
Yeah, that's all
big
they're talking about. That's all they're talking about. In fact, earlier I was trying to give Lee, my friend Lee, a little Hebrew lesson.
You were
speaking of Israel.
Yeah. Baruch. Yeah.
Say it. Come on, say it with me.
Baruch.
Okay, everybody in the audience. We were talking about Bernard Baruch, who's maybe one of the great men that you've never heard about.
Yeah.
Right?
I never heard of him.
And industrial pioneer, etc.
Yeah, I actually read a quote in a book that was about Warren Buffett, and it was a quote from this guy. And I thought, this guy's got enough quotes. He needs to be in a Warren Buffett book. I sure need to learn about him. And sure enough, I'm not disappointed yet. He has as it says on the book cover, a fascinating autobiography.
That's very cool. My friend Lee is a big reader, and better off for it. Wouldn't you agree?
I would agree. I'm very, very happy that I started reading. I feel like I've actually wasted a lot of my life not reading.
Well, it's good that you're still a young man. He's in his 30s, everybody. You should know.
That's true.
But speaking of reading, let's talk about the reading of data. Huh?
I had no idea where you go with this.
I found a way around that corner.
You did
a couple times.
Yeah, you found it.
We have with us today a interview that we've wanted to have for a very long time, and that is with David Tobias, co-founder and COO at Betterview.
Betterview has been around, I want to say, since 2011. I don't have it right in front of me, but I first remember going to InsureTech Connect as I was new to 470, and I wasn't real sure what I was doing in this world of innovation at the time. And I went to ITC, and they were one of the very few who were at the expo. It was a very small expo, a lot of people, but very few companies were actually showing what they did. Exhibitors. And it, ever since then, Betterview has been known as one of these emerging InsureTech companies. And they have a great story, and they have a pivot within their story, because they were first a drone company, and now they're not.
Right. Big pivot, which we'll talk about on this show, and the dynamics of going through a pivot, which are very interesting to us. Some drama in the story. It's not just a straight line between coming up with the first idea and where they are today. And so why don't we read his words, if you will?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. And go to our interview with David Tobias, co-founder and COO at Betterview. Hey, everybody. We are here with a special guest, somebody who we've wanted to have on our podcast for a really long time. Back when we started FNO InsureTech, the podcast, and we were goofing around with different technology tools, InsureTech tools, one of them that we were goofing around with at that point in time was Betterview. We have with us today David Tobias, who's co-founder and COO at Betterview. So somebody that's been there for the entire journey. And we're thrilled to have you and excited to talk to you. Welcome to our podcast.
Welcome.
Thanks, guys. Really excited to be here. Love the podcast and what you guys do and the information you kind of bring to the world about our space. So really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. That's very kind. This is absolutely a labor of love for us. And so, but it is now more complete that we are going to do a podcast with you for sure, because you guys are a player in our view in the InsureTech space. And so let's just jump in and talk about that. For those people who don't know Betterview and don't know what it is and what you do, why don't you start by giving us a minute or two on what Betterview is and what you guys do?
Yeah, no, perfect. We are a remote property intelligence platform. So we use geospatial imagery, geospatial data to pull in attributes about buildings and properties for insurance carriers. So we do this at very large scale for all different size and scope of carriers, personal lines, commercial lines. A lot of it really revolves around the characteristics of the building, but there is so much imagery available today from the manned aerial side, from the satellite side, that can be leveraged to create data. And that's kind of the table stakes, creating the data. But where we really spend a lot of our time and product focus is around turning that data into action. I've never walked into an insurance carrier that told me they needed more data. They have lots of data. They need data that they can turn into action, and they need tools to help them do that. And that's really where we focus a lot of our time, is not just creating that unique and proprietary data, but a platform that helps people make underwriting decisions off of that data and claims decisions and other things. But that's what we do from a very high level perspective.
Yeah, Rob and I were talking right before this, and we were saying, is it a software company? Are they doing things with the data? Are they collecting the data? Back in 2011, wasn't your thought to actually go out and capture the data? Isn't that what the original goal was?
Yeah, so we started as a drone company. So a little bit about my background. I come from the insurance world. My father had started an insurance inspection company over 50 years ago now. And I had taken over that family business and grew it quite a bit. We ultimately sold that business last year, about a year ago now. But in that business, we had insurance carriers coming to us asking for more and better roof data. Roof claims were really starting to go through the roof, if you will. And about 40% of all property loss dollars paid out in the U.S. go to pay roof-related claims. So they wanted the underwriting inspection reports to have more roof data on them. And I tried all these different things. We deployed 500 painter's poles to the field with a camera attachment so that, the inspectors could try to take, photos of the roof. You'd get, one corner of the roof, right? One tiny blurry photo maybe that really didn't tell you much.
Right.
We tried to get inspectors to go up on ladders, but good luck, going to somebody and saying, hey, I'll pay an extra $5 or $10 if you go do this very dangerous thing, especially in Scottsdale, Arizona in the middle of summer, just didn't work. So I started looking at drone technology as a way to get that roof information that I had carriers asking us for. And so that's really where we started. And I will tell you, a brief story. The first job we did, the first paying job we did on the drone side, very excited, right? Got a customer to say, yep, I will pay you for this roof data. We think it's valuable. We got a drone pilot out there. He got the photos. We sent it to the customer. My co-founder, David, and I are very excited, waiting for their feedback. They immediately called us after we sent this to them, and they said, what the heck is this, guys? You just gave me 500 photos. What does it mean? They said, what does it mean? And we quickly realized it wasn't about, the capture of the data. That's a means to an end. And even the data itself, it's about what does it mean, right? And how do you turn it into something? And from that point forward, we're really focused on how to, take this data and turn it into something actionable. And we, developed software to do that. So, capture was definitely a piece of it in the drone days, but really even from the very early beginnings, it was how do you turn the data into something actionable?
So were you trying to just improve your company that you were working in or running with your father, and then that kind of evolved into Betterview? It was the pursuit of drones that kind of took you down the path to where you are today?
Yeah, I think something that I do and Betterview does, and everybody in the company really thinks about and thinks through is what is the customer's problem and how do we solve it? Now, the tools that we solve it might change. We started as a drone company. We are no longer a drone company, but the customer problem never changed, right? And I think something that's really important to us is, don't fall in love with the tool, fall in love with the solution, right? And I think that's something that's really hard for people. And, pivoting from drones wasn't easy by any means. We had, we're venture backed, we have investors, so it wasn't an easy thing to do. But, if you truly are trying to solve a specific problem, you're going to use the best tool for the job. And so originally I was just trying to solve the customer problem. I hadn't really thought through, would it be a different company or this or that? I think as we started diving into the drone space, I realized it was going to require a lot more, technical expertise. It was going to, to create the software we needed. We're going to need more money. It made sense to do it as a separate company, but really always at the heart of everything we've done, then and to today was how do we solve the customer's problem?
And so the customer's problem is really, what does all of this mean? How do I interpret all this data? And somewhere along the way, you decided that drones weren't the only way to get this data from the roofs, right? You were able to get it from satellite imagery or aerospace, from airplanes. Am I right with that?
Yeah, so we had created a lot of software to automatically, help fly the drone, capture the photos, identify hail dings, and produce reports, right, that were actionable for the insurance carrier. So how do you take 500 photos, make it, 20 photos that matter, and target for them the things that are important, in those images. And so in doing that, we solved the customer problem, and the customers really liked it. We could identify things. It was valuable to them. But what everybody kind of kept coming back to was it's too slow and too expensive. We still had to send folks to the field. And, from my past in the inspection world, we were really efficient at sending people out. We had a network of thousands of drone pilots across the country. We did tens of thousands of, flights for different insurance carriers and reports. Essentially, they just said, look, it's too slow and expensive for us to really scale this and do it on everything. And so we, kind of stepped back and said, how do we provide some of the same level of insights, but do it a lot more cost effectively and a lot faster so we can really hit scale?
About 3 years ago, I really got into the drone army thought, and I got my license, and I did a lot of studying, and I studied about Betterview and Kesbury and Loveland. And it seems like maybe around that time, maybe a little before or a little after, that's whenever you decided, let's just really focus on the software. Loveland, for example, is still out there. They still fly drones, I believe, or you can actually do it. Is that still a model? Like, are these software companies still trying to put their own force together?
We made the decision that, our greatest asset wasn't going to be the drone network. When we started the company, there weren't big drone networks. Like we had to create it from scratch, go recruit the pilots, the whole deal. And so, as time went on, we said, like, that's not really our greatest asset. It was the software. And we started partnering with DroneBase to actually do the flights at that time. And then ultimately we sold our drone kind of assets to DroneBase. So it ended up being a good, partnership, because that is the business they're in. And, they were set up to just focus on that piece of it. And so, and we still have a strong partnership to this day. Can't speak for the other companies. I think the drone space it's a tough one. The regulatory challenges are still there. The technology continues to advance, but at the end of the day, you're still sending people to locations, whether they're your people or not.
Yeah. You're
still sending folks out. And so until beyond visual line of sight becomes, more realistic, I think it's going to be a slog, and there'll be a few winners in the drone space for sure. But, it's going to take longer than anybody thought.
So whenever I think of Betterview, I think of insurance. Is that what the partnership with DroneBase is mostly insurance based, or is there any other vertical that y'all would work in?
We focus on insurance. I mean, our relationship with DroneBase really revolves around the insurance. Obviously, they serve real estate and all these other verticals. We have remained focused to the insurance industry. Our competitors are going outside of that industry. Mm-hmm. I think, something we really value, at Betterview is knowing what you don't know, right? Yeah. And, so we do things outside of insurance here and there when people approach us, but our go-to-market is really around insurance. We know, our data is applicable across real estate and other industries, but, we really focus up on insurance.
So I'm very interested in pivots. Lee and I talk about pivots a lot, which of course happen frequently and we hear about frequently in the InsureTech world. Can you kind of run us through quickly how you got there? I mean, you've kind of hinted at around it so far in the interview, but how did that roll out? And did you guys were you having a beer one day saying, oh my God, what are we going to do? Tell us about the process and what it was like.
Yeah, I think any pivot or big change, whether it be in business or anything, is tough, right? It requires self-awareness. It requires data. It doesn't happen overnight. I think we kept hearing this, fundamentally, we kept hearing the same thing from the customers. That idea that, look, we love it, but we want it cheaper and faster. And so we would go into these conversations and say, okay, we can shave, we can find ways to shave off $5, $10. And they would come back and say, no, we need it for dollars, we need it for, $20, or, we need it for orders of magnitude less. And, even when we could turn things around in a couple of days, they wanted it in minutes or seconds. And so, you hear that once or twice and you kind of dismiss it as an outlier, but then you hear it over and over and over and over again. And, I think this is where companies that die in certain cases, don't listen to the market. I think you've seen some drone companies that have fizzled out or are in the process of fizzling out because the market just didn't support the tech. And so we were hearing that. We also saw that companies wanted to buy this kind of ad hoc, saying, look, yeah, we love it. We'll buy it when we need it. But they wouldn't commit. They wouldn't say, we're going to buy, 50,000 in a year or 100,000 or whatever it was. And so that for, being a venture-backed, company is problematic. We need to build committed, relationships with our customers. And so, all those things kind of add up. And also you just look at the margin profile of sending folks around, and you guys are familiar with that.
Yes.
There's definitely more dollars at play on the claim side than the underwriting side, but it's just, so fundamentally there were some challenges there, and, it happened over time. I mean, we started then saying, okay, how would we answer some of these same questions, in this more cost-effective, faster manner? And can we use some of the technology we already built to do that? We had created a lot of computer vision technology, a lot of reporting, a lot of, tools. And we started testing it. We started showing it to some customers, and we got positive feedback. We also had, some brand equity. People knew who we were.
Yeah.
And, that was definitely helpful. We had credibility, right? We even had, we had people under contract, and we were able to go test this with them. And so I think that was pretty pretty valuable. I think the only struggle after sort of the pivot was David and I would go into some of these meetings and they would be like, "Oh, you're the drone guys." And we're like, "Not anymore. We're not."
We were.
Right?
You were hung with a label.
But, worse things to be called, I suppose. So, I think it worked out and the brand equity helped. And, it's funny. We eventually wrote a blog post on kind of the pivot, why we got out of the drone business, because the question would just keep, coming up.
Sure.
And it's still one of the most read blog posts that we've ever, produced, because I think people are really interested in that story. And, with customers, I think it's given us credibility, that we listen to our customers and we change the product to meet the needs of the industry, really.
Let's talk about that for a second. I know that Nationwide is an important customer for you guys and also an investor, correct?
Correct.
And so I think it's really cool when corporate venture capital invests in a company like yours and then says to you, "Hey, this is what we want you guys to do for us," right? Which has to be so valuable.
Yeah, I mean, it's valuable. I think that getting that level of insight and access to, higher level folks than you would if you were just trying to pitch a product. We have Maiden Re as an investor. So we have a reinsurer, we have Nationwide, we have EMC Insurance as an investor. These have been very valuable relationships. So we have, a combination of traditional venture firms, VCs, and then corporate venture arms. And most recently, Guidewire is now an investor. So,
oh, wow.
That's a whole nother level from the software, side that is a really valuable relationship, not to mention, as an investor, but, gives us access to a different, a different level than others. And it's been valuable to us thus far.
Well, let's talk about the company, right? So I know that it brings data in, it interprets it, and makes it easier on the insurance companies. What exactly is it you're producing? Why would somebody want to use Betterview?
Yeah, so a lot of it revolves around roof. As we kind of hit on earlier, this is such a big loss category for, most carriers that write property. We have a roof score. We have different data points, shape and material of the roof. We have other things that are more just attributes, pools, is there a pool, a trampoline, solar panels? We've wrapped all of this into a user interface that not just brings the data forward, but shows you what it means and how we got there. So, you can give somebody a roof score, but if they can't look at your product and then say, okay, I understand why that roof got 100 versus this one that got a 50 or a 10, that's really problematic. So not only do we, create these scores and we create this data, but we show them in a very interactive user interface, how the machine got there, kind of turning machine vision, computer vision into human vision, if you will. So we show where the patching on the roof is. We show where the water ponding, or whatever the malady may be. We show that. And, that's unique out there. And we found, well, I should say our customers have found that kind of level of awareness helps them have conversations with their customers, whether that be the agent or the insured directly. So if they say, look, I'm canceling your policy versus, look, I'm canceling your policy and here's why, one conversation is a lot easier to have with the other. And I think something that's very near and dear to my heart is using data like ours and platforms like ours to move to risk mitigation, preventing the loss from happening at all. And there's a lot of opportunity, there to really collaborate with the insureds. It's getting, insurance has traditionally been, revolved around, repair and replace. And I think the world is changing more to this predict and prevent. How can you predict and prevent these things? And, we think we're one of the solutions to that.
So talk a little more about that. That's really interesting, the idea of mitigation and heading things off based on the data.
Yeah. So, in the inspection world, going back to my roots, maybe I'm aging myself here, but, in insurance inspection, recommendations or risk mitigating recommendations to the insured are commonplace. I mean, this is one of the main things we did. Almost every report that we wrote had a recommendation on it. And, these recommendations could be as simple as, hey, there's a lot of vegetation around your home, cut some of it back, to much more complicated, there's facade missing and you need to have that fixed. So just depending on what was seen out there. And now there's an opportunity to do some of that remotely, right? Using data imagery like ours and platforms like ours to automate some of this. So one example is, we know the vegetation overhang and what percentage of a roof is covered with that overhang from what Betterview does from the imagery. And so you could issue a recommendation automatically and say, hey, this roof is 60% covered in overhang. Have a licensed contractor come and cut some of that back. And not only can we do that remotely and automatically, we can also check to see if the insured complied with that remotely and automatically, and then clear the recommendation, right? We built the systems to do that. So that's really powerful. I think data like ours can be used for risk selection, which is interesting, but that will help you write or not write a policy. I think what's even more interesting is using it in an automated fashion to keep that policy, actually keep it on the books, but maybe improve the risk overall, which is good for the insured and good for the carrier.
So do you find yourself mostly on the underwriting side?
Yeah, so we are mostly on the underwriting side, whether that be quoting or post-buying, in renewal. We are doing a little more on the claims side just to help. It's not in lieu of boots on the ground, if you will, but hey, we have historical imagery back to 2014 as an example. So people are using our tool to just give the adjuster some information before they go out. But most of what we do is on the underwriting side today. And we also have access to what they call gray sky imagery or post-cat. So like all the storms that just happened, the wildfires, we have imagery, the day of, the day after. And we have people using our platform for some of that as well.
So it seems like your predictive side is just around the corner. I mean, I don't know if that's where you're going or if you're willing to talk about it, but you have all of this data, you have these roof scores. Now a weather event comes in. I mean, are you able to predict with some possibility of the amount of damage that could have occurred due to the size of the hail?
Our scores are predictive of loss, our underwriting scores, if you will, and we've trained that. We've tested it against claims data, right? We have hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of records now that we can test these different algorithms against. On the post-cat side or the even individual claim, we haven't gone as far as like trying to say okay, we can tell that X percentage of the roof is damaged and here's the potential dollar amount of that. I think there's a very intricate world that you guys know a lot better than I do around estimating claims. And then in the software platforms, there's basically one software platform where the majority of all loss estimates, claims estimates are written in. Right. And so it is a trickier world on that side of it. So theoretically, I think we really look at it as working with companies, like yours, right? And being a piece of that, and supporting that workflow that already exists.
Well, I love it. I mean, just talking to you, you're a company who knows what it is you want, and then you're not going to veer outside. And if it comes to you that maybe you need to pivot, you're willing to. And so far, it's worked quite well for you.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully we don't have to pivot again, and I don't think so. I wouldn't recommend it. So. I think, look, nobody goes into something like this, with the idea that you're going to pivot, right? But I think you have to just keep your eyes open, and things change. I think it's there's a saying, and I'll probably botch it, that have strong convictions loosely held. And I think that's something that we try to do is like, if there's something better out there that can still solve the problems and we can do it, let's go for it. Right. And so, I think it's just back to that idea though of, there's so much cool tech and opportunity out there, but if you fall in love with the tech and not the problem you're trying to solve, it's going to lead you down a very slippery path.
Right. We have the roof. We have some amazing data on the roof. We have some amazing data on the outside, but whenever the customer comes to you and says, hey, what about the inside? What about the front of the house? What is your answer to that? How do you help the insured, or do you help them with the rest of the underwriting report?
Yeah, I think it's first it's hey, still 40% of all the loss dollars paid out go to pay roof-related claims. So in a
That's a big
theoretical
one. Yeah.
world, if that's all we ever solved for the U.S. insurance market, we'd still have a very big business, right? But beyond that, we want to provide a holistic view to our customers where we can. I think one of the things we try to keep in mind too is we have very big ambitions, of course, but we also understand that we're part of a workflow, right? We're part of a workflow that already exists.
Right.
And so how can we snap into that workflow that exists today and really provide value across that chain?
Right.
So, I think you see some insurtechs or just companies, I should say, in general, who go in and say, well, we have this great solution. You should blow up your whole workflow. That's really hard to do in the insurance world, right? For all the reasons we kind of talked about, whether it be regulation or just, that's the way that somebody did something.
Just practically, it's complicated and difficult.
It's hard. So I think, we look at it and say, how can we supplement? Right. And one of the ways we're doing that is partnering with some of the companies that are doing self-inspection, right? Partnering with companies, boots on the ground inspection companies. Like, I don't think boots on the ground inspections, going away. I just think it's going to be more targeted in how it's used. And so I think there's a lot of value, to getting somebody to a site, but send them to the right site. That's an expensive asset, whether you're outsourcing it or insourcing it. It's expensive to send folks out. So send them to the right place, right? If something is very low risk and we can show you that, quickly, then maybe don't send them to that place. And if some place is higher risk, or for whatever reason you couldn't tell as much about it remotely, then send them to that risk. And so, we have folks using our platform to determine where they're going to send their people. And we are going to continue to build out, pieces in our software to help facilitate that, right? So, we, much like Guidewire is on the policy side, we really see ourselves, as that platform on the risk mitigation, the loss control side.
So let's talk about Guidewire for a minute. You bring up that you're part of the workflow. Guidewire is a whole different kind of animal in our industry, and I'm sure that you guys probably integrate with Guidewire somehow. Is that correct?
We do. So we have a officially supported integration with them. So somebody who's using Guidewire can just download basically our app, if you will. It's a little more complicated than that, but they basically have an app store, and they can use that out of the box, or they can customize it to meet their needs.
Is that an important thing? I saw that you have a representative from Guidewire on your board. Yeah,
so the Brian Desmond, the CMO of Guidewire, is on our board, and he's been extremely helpful. He's been at Guidewire for a long time. From well before they IPO'd, and he's seen that journey, and that kind of insight has been extremely valuable to us. We had that accelerator. It's called an accelerator in the Guidewire kind of nomenclature, but prior to that, we've had a long-standing relationship with Guidewire.
David, we want to talk about being an insurance guy in the InsureTech world. And as you know, and as we have come to learn, many InsureTech executives or founders have found their way into the insurance vertical, not necessarily because they came from insurance or from a world where insurance is a big part of it. I mean, they don't speak the language, et cetera. So talk for a minute about what was that. I mean, it must be a great advantage for you to kind of understand that there's this thing called underwriting where most founders have to become educated of what insurance is. So let's talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're in a unique industry, and as we've discussed, it's regulated. It's got some pre-existing workflows that are very ingrained. Knowing those workflows, speaking the language, is extremely helpful. I think hard to create a solution or a company right from scratch, solving a customer problem that you haven't lived and breathed yourself. Now, that being said, there's all kinds of disruptive technologies and founders that have come in to different industries and really disrupted them. I think our industry, in insurance, is especially difficult to come into as an outsider. So it can obviously be done, and there's some very successful InsureTech founders who've come, from outside the industry. But I think I think it's harder for them. I think, again, if you take a customer-centric approach, who can create a better solution for the customer? Somebody who's lived that problem or somebody who's come from outside the industry? And, that's obviously debatable. I'm biased, so I'll tell you, it's insurance is extremely helpful. But, I think it's helped us. I can tell you that.
Let's also talk for a second about the competitive landscape. We've had some other AI companies on who are looking at the roof.
Mm-hmm.
Do you find it to be a very competitive space, or do you each kind of take a different piece of the problem and attack it?
Yeah, I think one, it is a big space. It's still, quite a greenfield opportunity. So, there's a lot of business to be had. I think that different folks do take slightly different, tactics on it. Some are, more focused on residential than commercial, as an example. I think though, for us, if you look at it as purely data providers, I would argue that it is a somewhat competitive space. Folks focusing on the platforms and the decisioning tools and the next step beyond the data, I would say is a much more open space. And we do not consider ourselves data providers. So I think there's a distinction there.
I've been in this insurance space for a while. I think back, 20, 25 years ago to underwriting reports where maybe an agent would go out to a home and take 2 or 3 photos from the edge of the street, and the underwriting would happen. I assume there are still companies today who do that, but in talking to you with the root, we have all this data, we have scores, we have a lot of really neat things going on. Is there another step? Is there something else out there that's possible? Can we grow from here?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of room to grow with what we're, doing and what people are presenting today. I think the big opportunity to continue to kind of grow the overall ecosystem is collaborating more with insureds and providing them the data and resources to do that. I can tell you my personal insurer is, one of the newer, InsureTech companies, use a lot of data in their quoting process and things like that. But other than getting the bill from them, I haven't heard from them at all. Right. I think there's just so much that can be done engaging the insureds. And I think as you look at some of the, younger generations now and the millennials, they expect more of the companies that they deal with, right? They expect more engagement. And I think that is the next thing that's coming. It's really how do you run to the, getting away again from repair and replace and moving more to predict and prevent and making the insureds partners in risk management. I think it's funny. We talk a lot about the roof, and many times when an insured, a Betterview report is used to discuss something with an insured, they didn't know they had a roof problem because roofs are out of sight, out of mind, right? You don't typically know. Yeah.
There's only one way to know, and that's if you have a spot on your roof, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so, I think that a lot of the insureds would prefer to, maintain their buildings and know, but some of this data has been hard or dangerous even for them to get. And so, I think that just presents a lot of opportunities to really engage insureds. And I think that, in my humble opinion, is kind of the next wave, of InsureTech, if you will, and insurance generally is really how do you use all the data for good and not just, risk selection, right?
Well, we love the idea of using the data for good because, like you said, there's tons of data. It's just not necessarily structured. Structuring it in ways that are useful and that are helpful is a great goal and a great opportunity. And it sounds like you guys have seized on both of those. And like we said at the top, we've wanted to have you on for a long time. It's great that we had the opportunity, and we thank you for taking some time during this COVID world that we live in to talk to us. We didn't even hear any kids screaming in the background.
I know.
Well, we got lucky. I have a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old and a golden doodle. So, it was quite possible that one of them could have created some noise. So I'm glad glad it worked out. But I really appreciate it. I appreciate the insights that you guys share, shining kind of light on our space in particular, and love the conversation. Always love to dive into these things. Hopefully, you can tell it's very exciting for me to discuss what's going on in our space.
It's fun to talk to an insurance guy.
Yeah,
right.
It is
an insurance guy who's also an InsureTech guy, and so that's David Tobias, ladies and gentlemen. Well, thanks for being with us. We hope we have you on again in the future.
Would love to. Thanks, guys.
Lee, we've wanted to have somebody from Betterview on for a long time. It was wonderful to have a co-founder on. And they kind of come from, where we came from. So he was interesting and easy to understand and talk to. And what an interesting company.
Yeah, I love how he said that, we listened to our customers and they said, what are we supposed to do with this data? What are we supposed to do with this? And they said, oh, that's the problem. It's not getting it really. It's interpreting it. And they said, that's what we need to solve. And I thought that was just simple, smart. I mean, just listening to your customers, giving them what they want, not making it overly complicated, and staying within the walls, within the confines that they have. They're not doing just crazy things because somebody said, what about it? I'm sure they're testing out, but they stay true to themselves.
It does seem to me that this underwriting AI predictive analytic space has a lot going on.
Yeah. And with it is the need for speed, right? Because more and more companies are online. They want to quote you instantly, and they need that data now. You can't wait for somebody. A lot of times with an underwriter, you can't wait. I guess you could quote them, but bind them later. But they want to bind you online, and they need it in real time. So it takes companies like Betterview who can store this data and allow the APIs to exist so that they can quote and bind in as real time as possible.
Mm-hmm. Well, we thank David for being with us and look forward to more from him and more from Betterview. And we'll continue to cover this space for you, our listeners, who we do all of this for you. We do a little bit for ourselves too.
Mostly for ourselves, but we like them to come along with the journey for us.
I think you're absolutely right. Let's be honest with everybody. We do this for us because you know what? This is fun.
Yeah.
We work for a living. There's cool stuff. There's hard stuff. There's exciting stuff. There's boring stuff. But our podcast is always fun.
Always fun.
So thanks for being with us, and please subscribe and stay with us and look for another episode next week. And until then, we'll tell you
goodbye, everybody.